want them after class. I keep them all the time. All right, remember, Elijah wanted to indicate that Elisha was going to be his successor, and he took his cloak and he put it over Elisha's shoulders. And Elisha, by accepting the mantle, as we say, became Elijah's protege. I love that French word because it's like the protected one. Because he's being kind of overshadowed, and Elijah's like, he's saying, I'm selecting you, I'm segregating you, separating you, dedicating you, I'm protecting you in the same way that God protected Mary. I'm doing all these things by putting my cloak over you. And of course, Elijah got his cloak back. Now, although the relationship still remained, the covenantal relationship still remained, even though Elijah took his cloak back off and put it on his own shoulders. Now, eventually what happens is Elijah gets old, and Elijah needs to give his authority over to Elisha. And it's a sweet little story. It says, when the Lord was about to take Elijah up to heaven in a whirlwind, he and Elisha were on their way from Gilgal. And I love this. It says, stay here, please, Elijah said to Elisha. The Lord has sent me on to Bethel. And Elisha says, as the Lord lives and as you yourself live, I will not leave you. And they went down to Bethel. And then the next thing is Elijah said to him, stay here, please, Elisha, for the Lord has sent me on to Jericho. As the Lord lives and as you yourself live, Elisha replied, I will not leave you. So then they went down to Jericho. And then Elijah said to Elisha, please stay here. The Lord has sent me on to the Jordan. As the Lord lives and as you yourself live, I will not leave you. Now, then they get down to the Jordan River. Now, how many times has Elijah affirmed that he is not going to leave? How many times has Elisha affirmed he will not leave Elijah?
3 times.
3 times. In doing that, he is now formally making the covenantal relationship with Elijah. Earlier he had said, okay, I accept the mantle, and that's like it's conditional. It's not. It lacks the punch of now that Elijah is about to go poofing off into heaven. That Elisha 3 times says, "I will accompany you. I will not leave you." Blah 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 blah. So he has now made the traditional triple affirmation oral contract, and it says what happens now is they got to the Jordan River. And of course, we already know that the Jordan River is probably too deep to swim across, whether you can swim or not. Who even knows? Does anybody know how they got across the river? Ooh. Elijah takes his mantle. He rolls it up, and he goes, and he whacks the water. Now, what happens to the water? It parts. And Elijah and Elisha cross over on dry ground. Once again, tethering this moment back into the history of God's chosen people crossing over on dry ground. The reason I'm complaining is that in this NAB, in the first case, they say dry land. And then in the next 2, they say dry ground. And it's like, why are you making my life difficult? Do you guys not know the importance of these 3 things need to be the same? Anyway. So then what happens is, okay, now they crossed over the River Jordan because Elijah struck the water and it parted, and they walked over. And then, boom, here comes the fiery chariot, and whoosh, Elijah goes up into the air, and his cloak falls to the ground. And then, of course, Elisha picks it up, and now he needs to get back over the Jordan River. What does he do? He rolls it up, and he whacks the water again, and the water parts, and he walks back over. And the other thing I like about this, number one, is that, of course, the power is being mediated through the cloak. And the cool thing about it is, I always think of this cloak as like a divine battery, because the thing is that Elijah's gone. Anything Elijah might have had to do with the cloak working stunts like making water move out of your way, well, he's not here anymore. But Elisha, with authority and faith, can still use the cloak to make the water move again. And I always wonder how long the cloak might have functioned as a medium. You just don't know. I mean, that's the last time the Bible talks about it. But for all we know, he could have used it to heal people. Who knows what he used that cloak for? And it's just terrific. And again, it requires faith. I'm always laughing to the kids. I say, suppose a bunch of Philistines have been standing by the river and they decided they wanted to get across without having to, and they got a hold of the cloak. You said, you think if they went whack the cloak, they said, no, the kids know. If you don't have faith, it's not going to work for you. You got to have faith, or you have to have somebody intercede. I guess, Elisha could have said, stand back, morons. Here, let me hit the water before you not get across. Something like that. But if you don't, you have to have faith from somewhere to make the divine battery function like you expect it to. Now here's the last one from the Old Testament. We're staying pretty well on time. Oh, all these stories are just the best. Eventually Elisha got old. Elisha died and was buried. At the time, bands of Moabites used to raid the land each year. Once, some people were burying a man when suddenly they spied such a raiding party. So they cast the dead man into the grave of Elisha. And everyone went off. But when the man came in contact with the bones of Elijah, he came back to life and rose to his feet. So imagine that these are Elisha's bones. Now, when Elisha was alive, he worked, he multiplied food, he brought people back to life. Elijah had done the same thing. That's one of the reasons why when Jesus would perform miracles, people go, ooh, cool. He's like Elisha and Elijah. Ooh, what a player. And in this case, it's interesting is that this is what's left of Elisha. Elisha is long dead. These bones are dead bones. They are just laying in some grave in a cave, I'm guessing, like the kind of place where Jesus would have been buried. A dead person falls on them. God's power goes through these dead bones to bring that man back to life. One of the reasons I love this story is you all know what relics are, don't you? Yeah, you know. Man, it's the same thing. I love it. People, especially in South Carolina, people just look at Catholics. It's like, oh, you're like ghoulish, superstitious morons fetishizing these little bits and flecks of dead, quote, saints, unquote. Y'all so confused. You need to wise up. And I'm sitting there going, gee whiz. I mean, in the Old Testament, you can simply fall on some bones and they bring you to life. I mean, gee whiz. No, we're not sitting around going, I'm going to go take my dead sister and throw them down on some relic. I haven't expected that. So it's like we're operating at a much lower level just by venerating relics and thinking that maybe good things can happen. But again, it's like, gee whiz. It took me like 30 years to learn to say gee whiz instead of a lot of vulgar words. So I kind of overuse gee whiz at this point in my life, but it's a lot better than what the alternatives used to be. Anyway, so these bones are like the last little mediating moment that I want to cover from the Old Testament. So the first thing we had is that just generic ideas about media, then things that God did in the Old Testament, then things that people did to mediate in the Old Testament. And now we get to the New Testament. What could be more exciting? Let's see, where are we? And at this point, I'm going to propose something else about mediums or media. Here, let's use the blue marker. By the way, last week I was waving that black marker around. I got on my doggone tie. Oh, what a tragedy. What? I took it to the dry cleaners today. He said, oh yeah, no big deal. Anyway, but here's the cool thing about Jesus is we can look at it this way. Let's think about all kinds of different kinds of media. Okay, we have the TV, we have the ship, that can mediate goods to you. We have like, let's say, a book. What would a book look like? Yeah, that's kind of like what a book looks like, kind of. Book. There, right? All these things are taken. There's something over here, and it mediates very soon. It comes out over here, and then we have like Moses' stick, and we have Elisha's bone, and all these things like mediate. Ooh, and then we get to this, and I love this one. It's like the champion mediating thing. Yes, class.
Jesus.
That is Jesus. Jesus is like the mediator par excellence, as they would say in Paris. Yeah. Is that in the big picture of all the things that mediate in creation is Jesus is a mediator. And he's very specific even about saying this. Nobody comes to the Father except through me. And one of the reasons this is so cool is that all these other forms of mediation, or at least the ones that we're looking at biblically, they only mediate in one direction. It's like, boom, you got the stick, God's power goes through the stick, comes out. God's power goes through the bones, comes out. God's power goes through the cloak, boom, comes out the other end. With Jesus, the mediation, it's like, ooh, he mediates this way, but he mediates this way too, which is kind of artful and swell. Which is the whole business about Jesus saying, you go through the Father through me. And of course, then the next question is, well, how come we can say that our Father doesn't have any Jesus in it? Yeah, I know, but Jesus is trying to make a big picture idea. It's still okay to pray to God the Father, but he's still mediating in the sense of, remember, God the Father doesn't have a body. Jesus is standing there and he says, nobody comes to the Father through me. I'm like the thing that's physically mediating everything about God the Father. You're getting it through me physically, while I'm walking around on planet Earth as surely as if God the Father had his own body and was down here doing it for you. So Jesus is like this really, really spectacular kind of mediating influence. And of course that ties back to the philosophical business with the logos. Now the logos is this mediating thing that, between God and this creation and so forth and so on. So everything Jesus does now is like all these other forms of media are like peanuts compared to having Jesus now. Jesus is like totally blown the whole mediating thing wide open. And so one of the first ones he does, let's see, the healing of a deaf man, not deaf man. He left the district of Tyre and went by way of Sidon to the Sea of Galilee. And that's a way of saying he was in pagan land. People brought to him a deaf man who had a speech impediment and they begged him to lay a hand on him. They're so dear. I don't even know if these people were Jewish people. I mean, if he went through Sidon to get to Galilee, it may well be that some of these people were pagan, but they didn't care. They still believed Jesus could fix his friend. So love the intercession. Oh, Jesus, will you please lay your hand on our friend? It's so dear. And he took him off by himself away from the crowd. He put his finger into the man's ears and, spitting, touched his tongue. And then he looked up to heaven and groaned and said, Ephphatha, that is, be opened. And immediately the man's ears were opened, his speech impediment was removed, and he spoke plainly. He ordered them not to tell anyone, but the more he ordered them not to, the more they proclaimed it. What do you expect? Anyway, and I love this little part. They were exceedingly astonished. He has done all things well. He makes the deaf hear and the mute speak. And what they're doing is they're riffing on Isaiah, because that was what Isaiah was saying, that the Messiah that's coming is not the Messiah you expect, and he'll be doing these things. He'll let the blind see, he'll let the lame walk, he'll let the deaf hear. And so these people are kind of saying, ooh, this is like the guy that Isaiah was talking about. Could this guy be the Messiah? He hasn't had a bath in a week. He doesn't look impressive. And of course, again, could have Jesus just walked by and said, okay, everybody in town that's got some kind of ailment, you're all healed. Bye. Okay, don't bother me anymore. No, it's always that personal encounter with Jesus, the personal encounter with Jesus. You get your butt in front of Jesus if you want your butt healed. Okay? Friends need his butt healed, you get his butt in front of Jesus. And then Jesus cooperates. Jesus doesn't ever say, oh, ye of little faith. I don't need to touch you. He doesn't scold them for wanting that. It's like, of course I want to touch you to heal you. Because I'm coming to you in body and soul, and you have a body and soul, and you want me to come to you body and soul. Because I love you, that's why I got a body and a soul, because we can do these things. And I can touch you to heal you. And this always reminds me, I don't know if you've ever been to confession at like St. Raphka's. But there are some rites of the Catholic Church when you go to confession that the priest extends his shawl, that stole. He extends his stole over your shoulder. And number one, I love that because it's that physical contact which is part of the forgiveness. And that physical encounter, you get touched. And the other thing is that he's extending his stole in that, what I think is an overshadowing gesture of kind of protection and it's just so sweet. So I just love Jesus, always touching everybody. He's such a nice guy. And then let's see, where are we now? Oh, I thought this was kind of cool. See, I had a highlight. Got nothing to do with class, but what do we care? It says, this is the call of Simon the fisherman. While the crowd was pressing in on Jesus, he was standing by the lake of Gennesaret. He saw two boats there. The fisherman had disembarked, blah, blah, blah. He gets into one of the boats, the one belonging to Simon. I love it because he's getting into Peter's boat, and I always connect that to the fact that we refer to the Catholic Church as the bark of Peter. Because, yeah, it's the bark of Peter because Jesus got into Peter's boat. And of course, there's more to it than that because he put Peter in charge of everything. But I just love that little couplet. The bark of Peter got in Peter's boat. Terrific. Okay, so something else on this page I was really supposed to talk about. Oh, the cleansing of a leper. Now there was a man full of leprosy in one of the towns where he was, and when he saw Jesus, he fell prostrate, pleaded with him, and said, Lord, if you wish, you can make me clean. And Jesus stretched out his hand and touched him. I love it. Touching a leper. How much do you have to love somebody to love a leper to touch him? Probably wouldn't love a leper that much. Anyway, he says, Lord, if you wish, you can make me clean. He touched him. He said, I will do it. Be made clean. And the leprosy left him immediately. And he said, don't go tell anyone, but go show yourself to the priest and offer for your cleansing what Moses prescribed. That will be proof for them. And I like that. Again, a little digression, because Jesus is saying, yes, even though I healed you because I'm channeling, I'm mediating God's power to you, it doesn't mean you still don't have to go to the priest and do the ritual cleansing, which we covered earlier this year. That he probably had to go and they do the thing with the water and kill the bird, and the water and the blood would mingle together in a little pot, and he'd stir it up, and he'd splash it all over the leper and say, okay, you know, you're ritually healed and everything, and now we're going to go do the same thing to your house, wherever we had last let you live before you had leprosy, I guess, or something. But even at this point, Jesus is not saying, you know, boot kick that dumb old covenant. He's saying, yeah, that old covenant still matters. Remember, he always said, I'm not here to destroy. I'm here to fulfill. And it's just so dear and sweet. He says, yeah, we still do the things that God wants us to do. We still belong to the Mosaic covenant. Go in and do the things you're supposed to do and make everybody happy. Everything will be complete. And of course, then the next one is the healing of the paralytic, which we've already been through. I always think, what guts, you know, to actually go, ooh, lay hands on the leper. Everybody probably thought they were going to pass out. Let me get another. See, what's next? Don't worry. These do run out, believe it or not. Oh, my favorite. Oh, it's so wonderful. Oh dear. Media par excellence again. Oh, when Jesus returned, the crowd welcomed him, and they were all waiting for him. And a man named Jairus, an official of the synagogue, came forward. He fell at Jesus' feet. Oh, please come to my house. His daughter's only about 12 years old, and she was dying. As he went, the crowds almost crushed him. This is Jesus. People are so packed in around Jesus, he's almost crushed. Probably doesn't have enough room to breathe. You know how it gets like at the football game. It's like, oh, I can't breathe. Too many people. Anyway, as he went, a woman afflicted with hemorrhages for 12 years, who had spent her whole livelihood on doctors and was unable to be cured by anyone, came up behind him. And she was reaching out and she wanted to touch him. And she was probably slow, and the mob was tight, and she was weak from all her ailments. And I always imagine her like down on her knees, just like, oh, that last chance, and oh, Jesus is going by. Boom, and what does she lay her hand on? She doesn't touch Jesus. And she touches the last little dab of his cloak. Not just a big fistful of it, that last little moment, just a little tassel. And her bleeding stopped. And then this is the best. Jesus asked, who touched me? While all were denying it, Peter said, Master, the crowds are pushing and pressing in upon you. It's like, what do you mean, who touched you? And I love it for that first reason is that, of course, Jesus is God and man. And I love these occasions where Jesus is doing the man thing. Well, who touched me? Instead of saying, I'm all powerful, I know everything. You touched me, and I knew you were going to do it before you were even born. Okay, Jesus doesn't operate like that. And so he says, that everybody's pressing on you, and Jesus says, no, someone has touched me. He doesn't mean somebody just pushed me or shoved me or was shoved against me or, you know, that kind of thing. No. He said, someone touched me, for I know that power has gone out of me. I love the mediating. Oh my goodness. Okay, I'll have to draw a picture. Compelled to draw a picture. Let's see. Okay. Let's see. Here's Jesus. And Jesus is not in a good mood because he's being pressed on by the crowds. There he is. And he's standing here trying to mind his own business. And then here's his garment. And there's a little tassel there. And now we have this poor lady over here, which I'm not going to spend all day on, because time is limited. And there she is, and she's probably crawling or something like that a little bit, and then she just barely reaches over and just barely is able to touch that tassel. Now, classic mediating. First of all, we have God the Father up here who has no face. There he is. Remember, you can't go to the Father without going through Jesus, and vice versa. So first of all, Jesus is on earth, physically mediating God's power. Then, Jesus takes that power and mediates it through his cloak all the way down to the little tassel. And then the woman grabs the tassel, and then the healing power flows into her and fixes her. It's like boom, 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 boom. I just love it. It's such a great little story. It's so Catholic. Anyway, and so then she's healed And it's just the dearest thing. And it says, when the woman realized that she had not escaped notice, she came forward trembling, falling down before him. She explained in the presence of all the people